Peace and Black Power family. It's your Harlem educator, author, and activist, Brother IJ Taimba, filming live on location in that wonderful historical and political village of Harlem, New York. Welcome to our monthly edition. I guess you would say this is the December edition of the Black Power Cipher. And family, the weather being as it is, the seasonal changes, we got quite a few of our brothers are really just not feeling well, including myself, to be quite honest with you. Um, but we are going to continue what we set out to do. We have joining us our dear brother and comrade at arms, our scholar, warrior, community activist, our good brother Yusef Bunchy Shakur in the building. Brother Yusef, how you be?
I'll be good, black man. How about yourself?
Hey man, I'm blessed to be breathing, good brother. You
That's
know,
what's up, man.
survived the COVID. It is crazy, man. Crazy, crazy. But we're here, and I'm glad to see that you're here too, my brother.
Yes,
Um,
I'm here,
how are the
man.
studies coming with you? I know that you're pursuing your doctorate, man. How's that coming?
That's a great question. I appreciate you asking. I just finished my pretty much my last term of my coursework, so I have one more class starting next year, proficiency class, and I'll be working on my dissertation, looking to defend it in sometime next year. So
Wow,
everything's looking good.
that's excellent, man. That's excellent. And as we are building with the family, what is it that you would say? What is it that you're studying? Like, what is it you say is your interest in your scholarship? What is it you're looking at?
So, from an academic standpoint, my studies is centered around public policy and social change. So academically, whatever I write, I have to be able to contextualize it from a policy and social justice standpoint. From a personal standpoint, my studies is related to the Black struggle, and I'm looking at it through the lens of, of what is called, my methodology is autoethnography or scholarly personal narrative, where I'll be writing a memoir of examining the social dynamics of Black single motherhood, the phenomenon of that, related to in relationship to racial stigmas, how my mother was stigmatized, and how that stigmatization was transferred over to me.
Mm. All right, man. Keep us updated, good brother. I'm really happy to know that we got some of our people who really understand what the scholarship is all about, man, and connected to real problems and issues in our neighborhoods, man. So we proud to see you up in that stream, brother, and we know that you're gonna do us proud, do your mama proud, and everybody proud, man. You know.
I appreciate it, man. You laid the groundwork, man. So thank you.
So, man, what's on your mind, brother? You said what we gonna chop it up about tonight?
I think where we started out and allowing that to expand into the dynamics of like we're getting ready for Kwanzaa season. And for most of us, we know Kwanzaa is not just in December; it's every day of our lives. But also, maybe touch on a little bit. There's still a controversy around Kwanzaa. Dr. Malenga and the assassination of Bunchy Carter, John Huggins, and I'm not necessarily trying to go down that rabbit hole, but just let's open it up. Let's talk about the importance of culture, um, and beyond Kwanzaa, but just kind of using Kwanzaa as an entry point, and also within the academia. A lot of folks say Black folks shouldn't be in academia. Is that a cultural thing, or is that an anti-cultural thing?
Hmm. Well, I'll say this. I'll start with this. I think those you watching, first of all, thank you to my queen, Sister Brenda, is in the building. She's giving us the Harlem Liberation School greeting of Wukusu, which of course is the acronym for Wake Up, Clean Up, Stand Up. Sister Sheila's in the building. I think Sister Sheila is joining us from either Brazil or Germany. And so we just want to thank you. We have a Facebook user who hasn't identified who they are. We thank them for joining. We want to encourage you to let others know about the program, and maybe my brother RJ Miller. And we want to encourage you to subscribe if you have not already. The thing I think is interesting for our viewers to know is that nationalism has different expressions. One of the expressions is cultural nationalism. And I guess the US organization and Dr. Maulana Karenga, who ultimately invented or founded Kwanzaa, comes out of the cultural nationalist tradition. And I think one of the critiques of the cultural nationalists, uh, usually from the revolutionary nationalists, of which we might say the Black Panther Party would represent or manifest that expression, was that the cultural nationalists were superficial, right? Or like, they thought that just wearing dashikis and changing their names, the African names, speaking African languages, playing the drums, and things of that nature, connecting to Africa in a cultural way was superficial. That's one of the critiques. And to the credit of the cultural nationalists, I think that sometimes um, they were misunderstood. So I'm going to say culture is not, they didn't see culture as just changing my name or wear the clothing I wore. They saw culture as the totality of your existence. So culture was the way you raise your children. Culture is the way you engage in interpersonal relationship. Culture is your work ethic. Culture is your cosmology, how you communicate with or understand the divine. So I think they saw it a little. It was a little more complicated, but I think because of the times they were in, which were very sensational, I think because of Pro and FBI exaggeration and manipulation, and because it was just some intra-group rivalry that the groups like us and some of the cultural nationalists kind of got um, stereotyped as being, just a bunch of, ashe, and you know, and the dashikis, and people didn't see that. No, they're talking about that culture is the root of everything. If we want to have a revolution, if we want to change people's conditions, how people think and operate in the world, their policies and practices, you have to change their culture. And if you think about it, brother Youssef, if you take hip hop and you take, some people arguing that violence is in our community is a byproduct, which I don't completely agree with, by the way, is a byproduct of the music of hip hop. They're arguing that there's a culture through this music, through vibration, through the words, that's kind of leading our people to adopt certain thinking, certain behavior. If you take Honorable Elijah Muhammad and they're making bean pie to try to introduce navy beans and try to change the diet of black people, get them off the swine and try to change their diet, they're trying to change culture. All of this is peace, brother, peace, sister, instead of hey, my nigga, right? They're trying to change. So if you look at it, all of those are attempts to change culture, and none of them are sensational. They're day to day things. I think that sometimes, you know, in banging when we bang on people, we bang on the lowest, the lowest, the lowest fruit thing that's the most obvious, and the most obvious with us and cultural nationalists would be stuff like, they wore the African garb and had the African name. And there was also some other allegations I'm not going to get into at the time, but I'm going to bring my brother on one day, brother Scott Brown. He's out of UCLA. He's now with Colgate, but he wrote a book called Fighting for Us, and which I think is really probably the most, wow, most credible book written on the organization from a critical point of view. And he kind of raises a lot of what I said. If you think about it, it wasn't as big as, let's say, a Panther group, a Black Liberation Army, Republic of New Africa. But if you think about the impact, they have this holiday, all these people celebrate it. Some of these people aren't nationalists at all, right? But they're impacted by Nia, Amani, Kutuchakalia. And some people even name their children in this way. And there's cultural celebrations, um, particularly in this month, but also year in, year out, where people take the seven principles in Guzu Saba and really try to internalize them. So if you think about it that way, they were victorious. They won what they were after. in the sense that they have impacted our cult, they've impacted our people through culture. And I think sometimes they get misrepresented, mischaracterized, uh, in certain ways. Um, that's why I say I would agree with them that I'm all about culture. I think what I took from, and also remember, family, that this group comes out of the Black Power movement. So they, like the Black Panthers, were influenced by who? Brother Malcolm. And what did Brother Malcolm say? He said, we got to reclaim our culture. We got to connect with Africa. We got to stop being ashamed of our facial features. We got to stop dressing like them and talking like them and looking like them. So they took different groups of the Black Power movement, took different expressions of Brother Malcolm, and really tried to operationalize them in different ways. I think the cultural nationalists took that piece of Malcolm, our own schools, our own African garb, African languages, and they took that piece of Malcolm. Other people took, we have to absolutely uh, fundamentally change the system that we're living under. We need to fight for nationhood. They took that part of Malcolm. Some people took dietary choices and changing their names. And so it's interesting if you look at culture, if you look at a group like us, the Panthers or whoever, you kind of get a sense of the wide and deep impact that a brother like Brother Malcolm had, and how all these different people kind of took different pieces of what he was teaching and tried to manifest it. That's just another way to look at it, because I don't think we always have to look at it in a way that's always about the rivalry. So that's my take. But what do you think, Brother Youssef?
Man, you said a lot, and I agree with a lot of things that you brought to us. Um, so when we look at a culture and the absence of a culture, as briefly talked about hip hop, right? And some people say hip hop is a culture. Me personally, I think it's a subculture, right? And as a result of as a people who don't have a culture consistently, who live in this country, hip hop can be that culture, or other things can be the culture, right? Because when we examine our history, one of the first things they took from us was our culture. And sometimes, even in saying it, it sounds very simple, but it's more nuanced and more complicated, because as you laid out, a culture is it helps shapes your worldview. It helps determine who you is, how you deal with your enemies, how you feed yourself, how you clothe yourself, how you talk, how you walk, all those different things. And within the framework of our movement, had we saw the emergence of us redeveloping what our culture is. And when you look at the Black Panther Party and you look at the US organization, particularly those two, they was in their infancy stages. So as you acknowledge, their egos got in the way of how to handle each other. In hindsight, we needed both. We needed a revolutionary framework along with a culture to be able to enhance that. But because of their egos and this ideological struggle, this ideological battle, allowed them to be, have this collision. Because, as you pointed out as well, the infiltration. There was folks behind the scenes, and that's when you lead. We'll fast forward to the common day. I mean, there's certain Panthers or veteran Panthers. They don't want nothing to do with Kwanzaa. They don't even want to say the name Kwanzaa, because they believe the US organization was responsible for the assassination of Bunchy Carter and John Huggins. Very, very well respected individuals of the LA chapters of the Black Panther Party, which was it was like snatching their heart out of them. But as Geronimo Pratt, who was the deputy minister of Bunchy Carter, before he passed, years before he passed, he openly said, Karanga had nothing to do with that. That those individuals who pulled the trigger, or was police infiltrators, right? And these things that we don't critically hold ourselves accountable, but also critically examine the immaturity. As you open up, you talking about or I was listening to the commercial, or you talking about the need for political education, particularly for grown folks or young folks. And this what political education does: it sits us down to have important conversations about certain things. And so when we look at our history in America, we're developing our culture and who we are, but it can't be in absence of Africa. We're African people. We will never be the traditional Africans. And so how do we modify that within the framework within our struggle? And no one organization, no one person has that answer. We as a collective group of people, but also as we deviate a little bit talking about academics, having the study, having the ability to reclaim and examine and present some things that's moving forward, that will move us forward as a group of people. I mean, me changing my name to Yusuf Bunchy Shakur was not trying to go back to the times in Africa, but just having a heritage that goes beyond what was presented to me in the European context in America. Is there some parties in European? I did the African ancestry. They said it was like close to 10%, 5% of European blood in me. It is what it is. It doesn't supersede me being African. It doesn't supersede me being a black person. And so these conversations that we have to have, but also the question is, how often are we reading? Reading. Sheikh Anta Diop, who did a lot of great work on helping us discover who we are. But also, even going back, some of us get stuck in Egypt. Some of us get stuck in Kemet. We're not talking like Africa. It's made up of 52 countries, not one, two, three, or four. And then within 52 countries, you got multiple tribes, multiple languages. So you'll be studying for years on years on years. However, we need to zero in on some things, but also understanding like our political and social development. So that's what some of us prescribe to, what we call a new African nation, a new African people, saying out of our struggle through what the Europeans call the Atlantic slave trade, what we call the Maafa, it produced a new people. Not meaning new as a group, but meaning new as a multitude of African tribes who spoke different languages, who had different cultures, immerse themselves through their struggle to being one people out of survival. And and I think if we set with that more, it will help us. But also again, putting it in context, like where we at, we're fortunate enough to re-examine the Panthers and the Us organization and look at their failures, look at their pitfalls. Unfortunately, some of us who are still functioning in that frame, in that era, you know, um, and that's unfortunate because they didn't have the ability to learn, because they were so much into the movement, so much into the struggle, that we're in the movement, we're in the struggle, but we had the lessons. They was like kind of our parents, and we're the children of that. So if we don't take the time to learn and help that, and that will help us, rediscover and develop our culture. And I'll just conclude on this, on the hip hop thing. Like I think the dichotomy of hip hop is the streets influenced it, and it influences the streets nowadays. So it's a double dichotomy now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that, brother Yusuf. And also for those watching, I wanted to add that Brother Yusuf says something critical. Read, the importance of reading. And by reading here, we know that, this is an interdisciplinary thing. It's different modalities. You're going to watch YouTube for documentaries. You're going to see some films, right? You're going to have some books. You're going to have magazine articles. And yes, you will have some stuff you look at on the internet. But it's very important you understand that the internet has no check system. It has no peer review system, no way of you knowing if the person providing that is credible, or if the information that you're reading or consuming is right and exact. So it's important that we not get, if you're a person that gets 98% of your information from the internet, I'm going to challenge you to think about opening up other streams of getting information, because the internet is not very reliable for a lot of things like that. With that said, I want to promote my brother's book, Brother Scott Brown, Fighting for Us. He does a very good job of going through all the FBI records, the newspapers, all the primary source materials. He interviews former members in the US organization, and he provides a very balanced look. Some of it is not very pretty, and some of it is in some ways disappointing. But one thing yes, thank you, my brother. One thing he does show is that the brother was not, at least there is no proof that he was any type of agent working for this or that branch of the government. But I think you need to buy the book and read it for yourself. It's really a groundbreaking book, very exceedingly well researched. And when you consider that he was formerly a member of the organization, and then as a result of his research, left the organization, didn't condemn it, but said on the basis of his research he thought he should leave and do other things. I think that tells you a few things, but I think some of what we think about the organization and what's popularly portrayed about it, I'm going to say if we can't say it's not true, we can at least say none of that we can prove. So that's important in academia. Now, brother, let me see. I think we got some more comments, and let's see. Oh, we have the sisters. The sisters are representing strong. Sister Sheila, and by the way, she corrected me. Not Brazil. She's in Germany, representing Germany. And my queen Brenda in the building. They're giving us a lot of support, Brother Youssef, as Black women traditionally do, supporting Black men and Black women and Black children in the village. I wanted to raise this issue because we are in December, and we know that the day after Christmas begins the holiday, the celebration of Kwanzaa. And I know that there's some controversy over this. People who are not even necessarily critiquing Dr. Molana Karenga. There are people who say, "Man, this thing is obsolete. It's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. It has no relevance." So I was hoping maybe we could spend a few minutes just talking about what do you think is the importance of Kwanzaa, or is it important at all? And how would you weigh in on that, Brother Youssef?
I think that's a very profound question. What's profound about it is, as Black people, as a Black person, as a Black man, it makes you look at your Black self, and through Kwanzaa is the opportunity to re-examine yourself, to be reintroduced or introduced for the first time to yourself through a cultural lens that could be scary as hell. And that's what's profound about it. And unfortunately, it's been framed as its own version of Christmas, right? It's been simplified, and also it's been co-opted. And our brother H. Rap Brown, in one of his speeches, he said white people would co-opt dog shit if they saw themselves making money off of it. And I think that's the unfortunate, like same thing with hip hop, right? As a powerful vehicle as it is, we don't own it. And somewhat I think the same thing with Kwanzaa. As a powerful vehicle as it is, the question is, do we own it? And here in Detroit, one of our museums, the African World, the Charles Wright Museum, which is one of the largest in this side of the country. It usually was probably the largest next to what we have in DC now, right? And they brought in a new CEO, a new president, and this person has decided not to have Kwanzaa at this Black institution. And prior to this year, it was there every year for the whole 7 days. And you have very traditionalist type of people who practice Kwanzaa, been practicing for 20, 30 years. But then there was also a new opportunity for folks who didn't necessarily practice it, but it was a lot going on. So I think for Kwanzaa to really matter, the Black movement, the Black struggle, the things that we're talking about, if that doesn't matter, then Kwanzaa will just be a very feel good moment, a celebratorial type of thing, versus a place where you retool, you refuel, you get some good food, some good dance, but here's an opportunity to go to the Harbor Liberation School and learn some more stuff. Here's an opportunity to go to community movement builder or whatever the org may be or whatever the space may be. And I think that's where we're lacking. And then as long as we continue to lack on that end, Kwanzaa will always kind of have the bottom of it is just going to be falling to like this black hole. I hope that made some sense.
Yeah, brother, that makes complete sense. That this idea of who owns the cultural product. Now I know Kwanzaa is celebrated by about 35 million brothers and sisters around the world. As I said, I think earlier, many people have named their children after a principle of Kwanzaa, one of the seven principles of the Nguzo Saba. And some people live their lives according to the Nguzo Saba. I think it's really a wonderful way. It's like a moral or ethical kind of compass. I'm going to try to put that up if I can. If I can show that. Hold on one second. Let's see if I can show the principles while we're talking. Right. So if you see here in this little New York Times article, it's giving a breakdown of Kwanzaa. But I think one of the key things of Kwanzaa are the principles. And if you think about it, umoja or unity. And if you think about how he and the organization framed it, to strive for and maintain unity in family, community, nation, and race, or kujichagulia, self-determination, to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. I mean, you just look at the definitions, to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters problems our problems and solve them together. We can go on down the list. They really are beautiful, they're pragmatic, and these are things that are measurable. And I think one of the basic things that I kind of appreciate about Kwanzaa is this kind of Nguzu Saba, that we can kind of take these principles and we can kind of use them as a measuring stick. To what degree are we moving with purpose or nia? To what degree do we have kuumba or creativity? Are we allowing our creativity to infuse the things we do and say in the community? The only critique I have is that the self-determination, the Kuchagalia part, for those people who are into nation building, they feel that, and I think they're right, self determination is a much larger principle than naming oneself. So when I changed my name from my slave name Quentin Stith to IJ Taimba back in 1991, that was a form of self determination. But really, self determination refers to kind of a global sort of sovereignty as a nation. We exert our right of self determination to rule ourselves. So I think it's important that that piece be talked about when we talk about Kujichagulia. But other than that, I think it's really just a beautiful way to look at our lives. It's a prism. To what degree are we working together collectively? Or are we on our own? Are we making our own decision? Don't confer with nobody, just doing what we're doing? Or are we looking at ourselves as a team that moves together? So for me, oh, let me put this comment up. I think Sister Sheila says, for her, it's essential because this is how she can experience African culture in the Maya context. We all have our positive and negative points, and the work of Maulana Karinga should be acknowledged. I definitely appreciate that, Sister Sheila. And also, uh, Sister Brenda says you have a very impressive library. This is we got us a scholar activist up here now. Brother Yusuf is devouring them books, man. So I know you must have one heck of a library. Not to mention you roll with some strong OGs there too. I follow your post there, brother. Over the years, you've been rolling with some strong revolutionary OGs in the game. So you definitely, I know, get the knowledge from the books, from your experience, and from some brothers and sisters that were true to the game for real, for real. Are there any critiques of Kwanzaa? Maybe not just Kwanzaa, but how you see people trying to represent it. I've been invited to speak in Long Island on Sunday. I'm going to be talking about Kwanzaa. And I'm going to be coming real hard, brother Yusef, from the angle of don't make this another thing, another commodity, another object. you know, another object, just another object. This is a living, breathing holiday that people can really, if they tune into those principles, they don't have to read the whole Kawaii theory and know every single thing about Brother Karanga and the US organization, but they could really tune into the Nguzu Saba and really use those principles to reshape their lives, their policies and practices. But I see that it's really being commodified, and it's really people are using it very
Europeanish.
superficially. Do you have any? How do you see that?
I think when you said it has the ability to modify us, right? And if we understand the port, like we talked about the US organization, we talked about the Black Panther Party, right? And I challenge people to also think about RAM, Revolutionary Action Movement, think about SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and numerous and many other Black organizations. At the height of these organizations, you saw Black people rising. At the height of these organizations, you saw Black people rising. At the low point of these organizations, you saw Black people at their worst. You saw us at our worst. And it's something that happened, right? And the more we understand that, the better we can begin to see the value and the importance of Kwanzaa. And when these radical revolutionary voices, who was very prodigal, began to be assassinated, began to be incarcerated, who had to go underground. We had a lot of opportunistic individuals. Some of them was absolutely there, but they was in the background. They was carrying people books bags and shit like that. And now they're rewriting history, and they're rewriting history to the point where they're using a co-op methodology. They're integrating, through this radical, or this appearance of being a radical theme, and the people doesn't know the ability to determine or make understand the difference. And this is why sometimes when we say what we say, and people are like, why are you so hard? Because it's absolutely necessary that we hold the line, and the line is Kwanzaa has to be practiced as a liberation celebration, not just a holiday celebration. It has to be practiced as a liberation celebration, because we saw what happened with African Liberation Day. Something that's been celebrated for over 40 years is no longer has the same meaning or the same value. So Kwanzaa is now wrapped up into the European holiday structure. It has taken on the characteristics of the European holiday structure. It has lost its character of being a tool of acting, of Black self-determination, of constructing a Black nation through renaming ourselves, of finding our purpose, of educating ourselves within the context of being within the American culture, the American society. So W. Du Bois, as he taught us, there's two dynamics there. There's the American and there's Black, two warring souls, and we have to slow ourselves down to be able to understand that. And so we have a lot of misleadership. So as my brother wrote his book about leadership, I think it's important that we all read that, because I think for the 21st century, it really helps us to understand um, what leadership is and how to engage folks. Because a lot of people uh, who are practicing Kwanzaa, again, they're practicing it from a very European way, and they just clothing it as an African or a Black way.
Yes, sir. Brother Yusuf, I was thinking of doing something different since it's just me and you tonight.
Yep,
Maybe opening it up to invite some other people to come
sure,
in with us. What do you
man, that'd
think
be
about
dope.
that?
That's dope.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Give me 1 second. Brothers and sisters, I'm gonna put the link up so that you can come in. When you click this link, you're gonna come into the studio, and everyone will be able to see you. Just so you know. So if your hair ain't right and your background ain't right, just keep these things in mind. Everyone will be able to see you. I'm gonna put the link up now. Everyone should be able to see it. You can click on that and come right into the studio. What we'd like to do is have you talk about maybe what you think the importance of Kwanzaa is. Um, Sister Elaine, I see you are in the building. I would love to have you talk briefly about the difference between self determination from a nation building sort of vantage point versus self determination from a Kwanzaa vantage point, because I think people kind of misinterpret the two and they are radically different. So I have it up here. Wait, let me put it up. What is our link? Come on in. We'd love to see some people join us. That'd be great. Do something a little different. When you got fewer people, we can experiment. So, we take lemons, we make lemonade. I know brother a brother that I really loved and respected who taught me some things, brother Khalid Muhammad. He actually created a celebration called man, I can't remember. It was supposed to be I think it was Ganymede, based off the Adinkra symbol of the supreme being, and it was supposed to be an alternative to Thanksgiving. It's not widely practiced because I don't think he was able to widely promote it at the time, but I kind of admire people who are thinking out the box and are trying to create these institutions to help us have a different look, to look at the world differently. And I always respected him for that. Brother Karenga and the Us organization, absolutely. And we have a married couple, that's right on Facebook. Forget their names. The last name is Edu, Edu. They wrote a book called Akoma, and they created National Akoma Day, which is supposed to be an alternative for Valentine's Day. They have a whole book and they do a whole sort of workshop. I'm really impressed by people like that who think in that way to say we're going to put a new celebration on the books because our celebrations are very important. If you think about the money that these holidays generate, if you think about the meaning we give them, how our families come together around some of these particular celebrations, they're very powerful. And I think if we were to give it intentionality and make them culturally connected and tie in economics with it, tie in cultural values and practices all year, that such things could be really, really powerful. I was wondering, are there any other holidays that anyone thinks that we should think about creating any type of cultural celebrations? We have some that everyone does, wedding anniversaries, birthdays, but like holidays, actual cultural celebrations. I think May 19th, for many nationalists around the world, is recognized widely as a day to recognize Brother Malcolm. But I'm wondering, are there any cultural sort of holidays or celebrations, brother? You said that you think, hey, we need to put this on the books. Somebody needs to think of this. What would you say?
That's a good question, man. I mean, I think that I will have to bring up Black August. Like,
Mm,
I mean, even though it's not an alternative, but it's something. I think it fits what you're talking about. Something that's homegrown, and actually, I think it's an alternative to Black History Month. It's much more deeper. Black History Month has been co-opted from its origin with Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So yeah, Black August.
I like that. Could you tell us, for those who don't know, a little bit more about Black August?
Sure, thank you for that, man. I mean, depending on who you talk to, Black August has different outlooks. It's about that celebratory liberation theme within the prison system. It's in honor of George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, and I think a brother named Katari, all who was assassinated, killed within the California prison system. Jonathan Jonathan was assassinated, killed first. Then he was on the outside. George was killed inside, his older brother. And just even just show the power and the connection. The Attica. We talk about the Attica Rebellion, the Attica riot in New York, but very few of us made the connection to California with George Jackson, where in September, in remembrance of George, the brothers inside wore a black armbands, didn't eat, very quiet, and honored George, and that turned into the resistance and whatnot. And so people on the outside began, or I'm sorry, people on the inside began to identify and organize what was called the Black or August Committee on behalf of those individuals, where to simplify to think about the Muslims and when they do Ramadan. And so Black August kind of functions in that way, but it began to take a shape in the life of its own. When you look at the month of August, it's a very radical month in relationship to the history of Black people, the birth of Marcus Garvey, the uprising that was led by Nat Turner. There's Dr. Makulu Shakur birthday. Again, also George and Jonathan is assassinated in those months. So there's a lot of militant Black radical things in that month. And also, and within there, you take 30 days to retool, rebuild, educate, recommit yourself, but also to uplift and honor and pay homage to the political prisoners and prisoners of war in this country who are behind enemy walls, who are still suffering, fighting, and have sacrificed a lot. So again, it's that deep spiritual through this political lens of cleansing yourself. And you contribute how you can. You exercise if you can. You read but more important, you definitely read. So I mean, that's my take on Black August.
Hmm. Yes, sir. We thank you for that, brother Yusef. Now,
Well,
while you were breaking it down, we had some really good comments I wanted to share. Brother Gregory Jones, peace to the brother. Thank you for joining us here at Harlem Liberation School, Black Power Cipher. He said we should recognize and celebrate our scholar warriors. Just, I think, like he said, like we followed Euro Christian holidays. And I would absolutely second that sentiment. I'm wondering who are some of the scholar warriors that Brother Greg or anyone watching thinks we should celebrate. Certainly, I want to put John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben Yosef Jacqueline. I'm going to put Dr. James Turner, man, and there's so many more. But there's who are some of the people, the scholar warriors, that you all think we should celebrate? We should celebrate their birthdays in some type of meaningful way every year. That would be an interesting question, I think.
Dr.
And as we wait, yes,
I'm going to say real quick, Dr. Amos Wilson.
yes, sir, yes, sir, absolutely, yes, sir. One of the clearest. Oh man, that brother there, mm, Amos Wilson. Yes, sir. Think Bobby Wright.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, man. That Amos Wilson and Bobby, those are psychologists, psychiatrists, um, are so just what they reveal, peeling back the layers of our conditioning and stuff. They raise the stuff that you don't hear a lot of people talking about. You know,
Stada Shakur.
Sana Shakur.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I like Sharshi McIntyre. She's been deceased for quite some time, and I think she's more known in the Northeast. But she was phenomenal, and she wrote a book about the 13th Amendment and the sort of mass incarceration and how that became the new form of slavery. At least 2 decades before the sister
Michelle Alexander.
Michelle Alexander wrote her book. At least 2 decades before
Can you,
that.
can you send me the name of that book? You get a chance?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'll send you, yeah, Sharshi McIntyre. She's bad sister. Yeah, there's so many. I like Adelaide Sanford. She's more New York based, but she's with the Board of Regents. Um, and she's still alive. She's about 95 or six. And man, brilliant in her just insightful, her commentary and always never condescending, never belittled black people. She just has a way, kind of like Susan Taylor-ish, of dropping things that we need to hear that is sometimes critical, but doing it in a way where you feel cleansed. And that takes a lot of skill, you know?
Uh, what's the sister? Toni Morrison.
Toni Morrison.
Yes.
We just saw a documentary on Toni. I think on Toni Morrison, right, babe? That was beautiful. Yeah, I don't know where we saw that, but very good documentary on Sister Toni.
Ella Baker.
Oh, no, now you're talking my talk now.
I know you.
Sister Ella, man.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, man, Sister Ella. And I think they have an entire they have a website, an organization that promotes her work. And they should promote her work because I think the way she got down was she was a member of so many organizations, but she never dominated any of them. She never dominated them. She was member. She gave input. She helped to build SNCC. She stayed out of their way. She let the young people make their own decisions. She didn't interfere unless they asked her, and she would give her advice. She said, "You got to make your own decisions." And there's some about that that's very African and very effective. It allows people to grow, make the mistakes, and learn, and still have the benefit of what being connected to elder jegnership or mentorship. So yeah, Ella Baker always. Now we got Sister Elena says Dr. Yusef Naeem, Clyde, and Brother Malcolm X. Thank you, Sister Elena. The people are adding on. Thank you. Gregory Jones says Dr. Chancellor Williams. Yes, the famous author of The Destruction of Black Civilization and the Rebirth of African Civilization. And
Rebirth don't get talked about a lot.
at all. That's right. Everybody's so caught up on it because that destruction of black civilization is so titanic that people get stuck on it. But yeah, the Queen says Dr. Turner as well, and I think she also says, okay, she says we should create our own calendar that gives an alternative to European holidays, one of substance that reflects our culture and our greats. When we were growing up, there was a calendar. I think your girlfriend, babe, father made this calendar, brother. And this calendar had all of these notations of different black greats. I don't know if that calendar is still produced, but yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Having a calendar, and there was a comic book, brother. You said, do you remember a comic book that was a black comic book, and each episode, each edition highlighted one particular black person. Do you remember that at all? Does that sound familiar?
Nah, I think that might be before my time, bro.
Yeah, man, that was beautiful. That was beautiful, and even stuff like Ebony Jr. Did anybody read Ebony Jr.? I'm 54, so I might be a little. Maybe an age related thing, but Ebony Jr. was created by Ebony Magazine, and it was really phenomenal for kids. You could draw art, and they would sometimes submit your art and show it to people. They had different phonetic and literature based things that you could read to develop your reading. It was really good. It got discontinued because not enough black people supported it. But I know my grandmother got it for me every year, and I love that little magazine. And for those of you who don't know, Ebony used to be very progressive. I'm talking about Ebony magazine. You had a brother named Hoyt Fuller who had a magazine before Jet, whose name escapes me right now. So much going on. Big in the Africana studies world, big in the Black Power world, was the size of Jet, but it talked about all the radical Black political stuff of the day. Of course, as Black Power waned in popularity, Jet replaced it. And of course, Jet is a completely different sort of magazine. But yeah, yep, I agree with you, Queen. We need a calendar would be really good. Definitely a calendar would be good. Holidays, and there's so many people. But guess what? Do you think that black people should take off day? I'm gonna keep it real. Take off days from work. That's how you know we serious. When we like, I'm not going to work on May 19th for Malcolm. Do you think there's any days black people should actually celebrate a holiday, a person, an event, and not go to work, whether it is officially recognized by the state or government or not? Brother Youssef, what do you think? And if so, what would you suggest would be one of those types of days?
I mean, I definitely Malcolm X birthday or the assassination. Um, I mean, just staying there, and and it kind of goes back to Kwanzaa, right? If we're practicing the principles of Kwanzaa 7 days or every day of the year, like the self determination, that would be a part of that. Versus like when after the George Floyd murder and the uprising and the protest, Juneteenth, officially it no longer was in the closet. It came out because white folks recognized it, and people began to put it on. Oh, we can take this day off because they're gonna give it to us. I mean, and it continues to pacify us. And so, I think to your question, makes us think. And I think this is about like culture is part of a resistance. Because if you don't have if you're not culturally in tune, you don't know what you're resisting for or against. And I think having that, and celebrating like Malcolm in that way. And if they was to give us his make his birthday, it really would take Malcolm and whitewash him. Versus what they, I mean, I think that they whitewashed King. King has been problematic, also very engaging in our struggle as well. But Malcolm, we know who Malcolm was, what he stood for, and to be able to acknowledge and do that for him on his birth like that, it would be very powerful.
I agree. And I think also, Brother Youssef touched on something that's important. Sometimes we want other people to validate our heroes and sheroes. And that's not necessary. As long as we validate them in the way we choose, that is fine. Because oftentimes they will absolutely attempt to absorb our most radical revolutionary heroes and almost make it seem like they were some great American hero. I remember
Right.
being in high school and my local live public library was showing a film on Malcolm X, and in the beginning of the film, it said that he was a great American hero, and I had to raise my hand and say, I beg to differ with that. He wasn't an American hero. He said he wasn't. He didn't consider himself American. He wasn't a flag saluter or a flag waver. So how do you now try to recast him and revise him as some type of American patriot? That's very important that we be able to check those things and don't allow people to absorb all of our heroes, our cultural celebrations, and all these other things. That we keep them um, legitimate and keep them credible and keep them revolutionary. Because once they get them, they try to change it up. It's like listening to Stevie Wonder sing a song and then listening to Frank Sinatra singing the same song. If y'all don't understand, like, you are the sunshine of my life. It takes all the soul. It's not the same thing, right? So
don't
it's
don't
important
hit you the same.
that that's right. It's a whole different product. So that's important too. Was there any We're coming upon 4 more minutes before we close out. This time went quickly. Was there anything brother? Oh, the Queen says she's adding George Jackson, Fannie Lou Hamer. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um and was there anything you wanted to add? Brother, you said that you get to say it could be relative to this or not.
I just real quick, we didn't get into the Dr. Milan Karanga issue, and I'm not trying to get into it now. I would just challenge people to go out and study, investigate. Just don't go off what other people say, and also think about, like, as Black people in this country, we have to engage and deal with contradictions. Um, And so, dealing with Mala Karanga, there's some contradictions, but also if you haven't investigated, you really can't understand the contradictions. And Geronimo Pratt said that Mala Karanga and us organization was not responsible for the murder of Bunchy, Carter, and John Huggins. I have my issues with Mala Karanga, but that's not one of them. I support what Geronimo Pratt said.
Hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah. To Brother Yusuf, for those watching, is also to understand that black people were not fighting in a vacuum. It's kind of like the difference between being in a boxing gym and you're shadow boxing, but you just shadow boxing with yourself versus being in a ring with a real opponent.
Right.
So when you're looking at black people doing things you don't understand, why would they do that? Why are they saying that? Why are they acting that way? What's going on? Please remember the context is these people were young, number one.
Mm.
Average age 16 to 20 in the Black Power. These were young people, right? Secondly, they're under tremendous governmental repression and pressure through COINTELPRO. They're being targeted. They're being framed up. You had a practice called snitch jacketing, where if Youssef is this great community organizer, and I'm the white man trying to neutralize what he's doing, I simply spread the rumor that he's a snitch, that he's an agent. Why? So that nobody trusts him, so that we remove from the black community a great community organizer. They called it snitch jacketing. That's why you will never hear me calling anybody publicly a snitch. Although I might um uh you know drop a few hints about some things and try to point your direction to some materials, but I will never outright say that, because if you can't prove that and you're wrong, you can cause a person great harm and damage to their reputation. And that comes from my study of COINTELPRO. Snitch jacketing is something they would do. So to add on to what Brother Yusuf said, that's another thing with Brother Karengo or anyone else. People said Elaine Brown. I've heard a bunch of names thrown out, and I said, well, I'm not going to get on that because I can't prove that. And that's something that you really need to be able to prove when you say, because people can throw that out just to get you off the track, so that you now are not supporting people that you really do need to support, who love the people, you know. Um, but with that said, we got you got Christmas coming up. Our people are saving their pennies and doing their overtime. They got to get their gifts and yada yada yada. I do want to remind people that when you're on your deathbed, which I have not been, but I would imagine the last thing you're gonna think about is, oh, I wish I would have got the more expensive Jordans. I doubt it. I think you're gonna be saying stuff like, I wish I would have had my priorities right. I wish I wasn't chasing something over there and I should have been here. I wish I would have been spending more time with the people I care about. I wish I would have followed my dreams and not have given up so quickly. So I would just remind us that holidays are a good time to kind of refocus on our priorities, on the things and people that are really important, and to try to resist the temptation to get caught up in one of the trillion micro distractions that are placed before us, because their number one tactic is to keep us distracted, family. Trust and know it. Brother Yusuf, man, I want to thank you as always for coming out. We got to talk about our thing. Me and Brother Yusuf are going to be doing some stuff too with another brother. We're not going to reveal that quite yet, but we're going to be coming out with some stuff too. We hope that you all will support. Um, Please subscribe, leave your comments. Brother Yusuf, how can people reach you if they want to build with you?
Folks can catch me on Facebook, man. Yusuf Munchie Shakur. I run and control my own Facebook. Check my messengers. That's the best way to get at me right now.
All right. And that's what it is, family. Stay strong, stay positive, stay black. Think for yourself, get the information for yourself. Believe in the people, believe the best of the people, but be no one's fool, family. With that said, we're going to sign off. Peace and black power. Thank
Peace,
you,
black.
Brother Yusuf.
Peace, black man.
Thank y'all for joining us, y'all. Have a great evening and a great week. Peace.
Peace.